that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet. That you showed up was written in my palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. Yes, I'm the winner, yeah. 'Cause I'm the winner, yeah. Am I awake or am I dreaming? So far gone, I won't look back. And when I move, there ain't no stopping me. You're pushing me up to the top. I saw the clouds looking angry, but then the sky reached my mind. And when I space out, I see the possibilities unfolding the way that I want. That you showed up was written in the palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free. You cut me loose. You make me win in every way. Win in every way. You show me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day.
Welcome, you guys. It is time for another amazing live stream. Welcome to Outpost Gray. I'm your host, Jax Scott, and Outpost Gray is a cybersecurity YouTube channel designed to provide you information in the cybersecurity, intelligence, and technology and innovation space. I am so thrilled to see you guys all here. The chat is already filling up. I have already seen familiar faces in there. Excited for this interview. I have been waiting for this interview for quite a long time. This is a precursor to another interview that we're actually going to be doing probably in late February or March. So stay tuned for that when we have a panel of hiring managers that are going to be coming on the show and doing live reviews of resumes and sharing with you their insights on the hiring process. But today, we're going to dive into the cybersecurity hiring process with a dear friend of mine, a tech expert, and Cooper Kitty right here, and a podcaster, Erika McDuffie. So you guys might know her as the co-host of Hackers and Hexen podcast, as well as the GRC Ninja. So we're going to go ahead and bring her on the show and let her do her own intro. Hey, Erika, how are you?
Oh, hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm so thrilled. I'm like pumped. We were talking prior to this, and it's been, you and I have both had like back-to-back meetings all day today, but we're both amped. We were going over our talking points and everything, and I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. It's gonna be awesome. So you already know how it goes. Like, tell a little bit about yourself. Like, tell everybody like why you're here, your background, and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So to everyone here, hi, thank you for joining the live stream. My name is Erika McDuffie. I am a senior director at a large cybersecurity consulting firm. My entire professional career has really been focused in the cybersecurity space. So this is definitely my niche. I have worked at several organizations, so I would say I definitely have some experience here when it comes to talking about the hiring process, both from a internal perspective as someone who sees a lot of resumes day in and day out and makes hiring decisions, but also as somebody who has had experience from, working at different firms and seeing how the process differs. Oh, Jax, you're on mute.
I just did the mute thing that you're not supposed to do. Thanks. I've only been on so many calls today. I want to caveat what you were saying though, and touch on that. There is definitely a difference in the hiring process going from even the commercial to the private sector, depending on the organizations that you're trying to work for. Is it a more technically driven organization? Is it a startup? Like, do they have a smaller HR department? Bigger HR departments are likely going to have the AI and different technology to filter resumes. So I say let's dive into this, Erika, because I know in really quick admin note, if anybody has questions, just make sure to put a capital Q in front of it so I can see it, and then I'll bring it up on the screen and let Erika see it, and we can answer any questions in real time for you. So hiring process. You hear about it all the time from candidates, and one of the chief complaints is the HR department doesn't know what the requirements are for an entry-level position or any like, let's just say any technical position. So my question is, do you think it's the hiring gap, the issues that we're having? Do you think it's an HR problem, or do you think it's more of maybe a lack of education for the candidate, understanding like resume and review? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I will say, I don't think that for the most part it's an HR issue, because as someone who's involved in the process from a hiring manager perspective, I generally lean on my HR function for the initial screen, right? So they're the ones that are filtering the bulk of these resumes. I've given them pretty clear guidance on what I'm looking for. And as part of that, I've also helped them put together, whatever job description. We've worked on that hand in hand. So what they have, should be pretty clear on what I'm looking for versus not. And I would say something that we pretty much do all the time is just do some live reviews. So as new recruiters come into the organization, or maybe, different hands are in the pile of resumes, I love to do some live review with certain recruiters to make sure that they're educated on the things that, spark some interest, and other things that we're like, maybe worth a screen and maybe worth diving deeper into this specific area with that candidate. So I think that obviously it depends from organization to organization. But from my perspective, this is more of a making sure that the candidate is well aware of what the job expectations are, and then also, kind of fine tuning what their resume looks like to fit the needs of that job. Because as you alluded to earlier, the commercial field can vary from like the government space, and depending on where you guys are looking to get employed, even different countries can, require different things and taste and flavors for different types of resumes.
Yeah, speaking of resumes, because this is always an area of contention, and until recently, I was helping a lot of my mentees with their resumes, but it's a full-time job in a way. Like people are going to be reaching out to you, and the thing that I have found with resumes is, you've seen one resume, you typically have seen one resume, because everybody's formatting is always different. And I always find that so interesting, because there's all these templates, but everybody wants to put their own flair on it. But I find sometimes that flair and that layout, it doesn't present the candidate in the right way. And so my opinion, and I want to get your feedback, and I want all of the viewers to get like your thoughts around this. A resume, do you think that a resume can make or break you getting that first interview by just how it is formatting? You think, and that could be, and not even just get the job, but just get that first interview?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's your first impression, right? That's your first impression of the candidate. So and I'll preface this, I will say that everybody's going to have their own flair. And that's okay. I welcome that. I want everybody to, look at their resume and want to make the fine tweaks that they want to do. It would be really boring for me if every resume looked identical to one another. Same from like a formatting perspective. But just know that that's the first impression that you're making. So if you have periods and certain bullet points, and you don't have them in other bullet points, like, do you have an eye for detail, right? If your fonts are all over the place, does it make me feel like you really took the time to take this opportunity seriously, right? So there's little things like that definitely stand out. And honestly, those resumes will likely never get to me. Those resumes are quickly pulled out of the pile by recruiters that are looking for consistency. They're looking for level of detail, and they're looking to make sure that these candidates actually looked at the role that they were applying for and made sure that their documentation was cleaned up, right? So I think a point to make here is, if you're a prior military vet that has, experience in supply chain, but you're wanting to come over to the cybersecurity space, right? If you're also applying for other supply chain jobs, your resumes are going to look really different based on what you're applying to. So maybe you're trying to break your foot into the door in the cyberspace, and in that case, your resume should be more tailored to highlight the skill sets that are transferable and applicable to the job that you're applying for. And vice versa, if you're going to maintain the supply chain type focus, those are the types of skill sets that you should be highlighting. So while you may have, a couple of jobs in mind, you should also have multiple resumes set out that highlight these types of skill sets, buzzwords, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I know when I go after jobs, I have a niche area that I know I want to stay in, but I know there's certain individuals that have a couple of different things, because maybe they don't know what they want to be when they grow up yet. And so they're trying to, or maybe they're just trying to break into the cybersecurity industry. So maybe they're going to school for computer science and, a developmental engineer, but they're not getting any job interviews. So they're thinking, okay, well, I do like GRC. Maybe I'll start applying for those. And you need to have that differentiation in your resume. Let's talk on, you've got a couple of different resumes, but how does that look when you're filling out the content? Okay. I want talking, because I have seen resumes laid out in so many different ways, but I visualize it a little bit different. I've seen some of the most successful resumes laid out a certain way, but I want to get your thoughts. Going from the top down, should there be an executive summary? What should go first? Because that's going to be the first thing. You're going to look at the first thing. You're going to know immediately how much time this person has taken in this resume, what type of position they're searching for and looking to get just by that first look. And what's your thoughts on that?
So, obviously, this is my personal opinion. So some hiring managers may be looking for different things, but from my perspective, I don't necessarily think you need to spend a ton of time putting together an executive summary. I want to jump in straight into the meat of it. You're really just wasting some precious space, in my opinion, on making perhaps a more consolidated resume. When I look at that resume, I'm reading, like the human eye does, from left to right, and I'm reading top to bottom. So I want to see highlighted at the top what your most recent employment is, right? So if you are, and this holds true for people that have been in this space more frequently. So like highlight whatever is most relevant to the job that you're applying for. So if you had, let's say, an internship, or you had something that was relevant to the GRC space and you're applying into a GRC type field, I want to see something that's relevant at the top that catches my eye and makes me want to keep reading.
Yeah.
If you served in the military 20 years ago, like that's awesome. It definitely speaks to a lot of core skills and valuable things that we care about. We really do. But that's something I would say, like, highlight later down at the bottom so that, it's definitely in there and it speaks to who you are and your capabilities. But maybe within your military experience, it's, it was something that was not the focus of GRC, right? So it shouldn't be at the tippy top in my perspective. And similarly, if you're somebody who maybe is looking to do a career pivot and you're currently studying, let's say you're doing your master's in cybersecurity and you haven't had a cybersecurity job yet, I would definitely highlight that experience of like education before the years of whatever jobs you've been doing in the past that do have those transferable skills, and again, highlighting those.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think understanding how to do those, and this is a lot for veterans, understanding how to transfer the skills that you've done in the military or in a different sector into that resume to get into the cybersecurity field is a really critical point. And my best advice on that is reach out to people that are in the space that are doing the job that you're in, and be proactive and build your resume out in advance, but then reach out to them and say, hey, can you help me? The skills that I have, can you help me put them into my resume and reword them in a way that'll align me properly for this particular job or jobs within this sector? Yeah. And that'll help so much. Yeah.
I would say, like, people in this space, I mean, we're all in this space because we love it. And I think that we're all pretty collaborative. I like to think so anyway. So if you have people that you're in class together with, or people that you've made connections with, like networking on LinkedIn, ask for their time. Right? The worst thing that they can say is no. So if you want an extra set of eyes and some feedback on your resume, maybe it's been a few years since you've cleaned up your resume, or maybe this is a different, specific area you're wanting to get into, then reach out to somebody, like you said, Jax, that has that role or is, more well-versed in that area, like currently, right? And get their perspective. And, you're not going to expect them to like completely redo your resume, but at least give you a gut feeling of like, hey, I like the way this is laid out. I like the way that you're highlighting X, Y, and Z. And maybe here's some generic feedback on things that you could improve. So I think like going into it with the right expectations and just asking for help, I think that goes a long way, especially as you get more comfort into what these hiring managers and recruiters are looking for.
Yeah. And to touch on the guts of the resume, because there's, you mentioned the quantifiable data and putting relevant information, but what are your thoughts about how many bullet points do you need to have per job? And this will tie into another question about how many pages, because do you need how many, 2 bullet points, 3 bullet points, or maybe 5 for the most recent job and then 2 for every job following? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it goes hand in hand with that other question that you mentioned about the length of your resume. So I think like the appropriate answer is it depends. If you have all of this transferable skill set where you have to highlight, let's say, sales quotas, and these numbers are really, really key to you getting your foot in the door in this particular job, then by all means highlight it. However, if your resume is 3 to 5 pages, right? Maybe kind of take a fine-tooth comb and do a second or third review where you're wanting to get like a little bit more granular on what you want to highlight, right? Because everything initially, I think like the first round of getting your thoughts down is just brainstorming. So put as many bullet points as you need, but then start to kind of highlight and fine-tune the bullet points that you're starting to see, okay, these this is really starting to make sense. This is really what I want to highlight. And this is really what I think is the most valuable top 3 things I think that this job really led me to, that are resonating with me with what I'm seeing in this job description of the job that I'm wanting to seek.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so I have one page, and I am all about the one page because I believe that when they get my resume, there is enough information that they know why I would be a perfect fit, but it also gives them enough information for them to ask me questions once they have that initial meeting with me without them having to go to that second or I know I've seen people, I think we had an example given to us a couple of weeks ago where the person had a 30-page CV sent over. It was wild. I don't even know. Wow. So that's like a white paper for the resume. True story, everyone. So question on that, I have 13 plus years experience combined plus 18 years of experience in the military, which I have, but to let everybody know, my military experience is actually one of the last things that's on my resume. And I do it in a format that shows all of my relevant time in the civilian sector. We'll just say that. And then the military, because that's a lot of time. I mean, that's 18 years. So I only have 2 bullet points of why that's relevant. Obviously, I do cybersecurity and electronic warfare, so it's relevant. So it's going on there. Outside of that, I have only my last 2 jobs and then my current Outpost Gray. That's really it. That's all it's on there. And everything else it fits on there. And then any of my volunteer work or anything like that, I have just barely at the bottom. But what's your thoughts around that? Would you see that and be like, wow, this is an executive level person. They only gave me 1 resume. Have they really not done any more than this? Or
No, I think this is a great question. And I'll be honest, my resume is also 1 page. So we're kind of on the, you're asking people that may be a little bit biased. So I love the 1 pager because you're able to condense and just consolidate your experience into what those highlighted things are, the big things that are really jumping out at the page. And like you mentioned, yeah, your military background is 100% relevant, but it maybe only needs 1 bullet point, or maybe just 1 bullet with a few key level skill sets that are transferable, right? So I do think that when resumes get to be more than 3 pages, honestly, they get to be a little too lengthy. And that's when you see resumes that don't have bullet points. They have more of block paragraphs. And it's not only paragraphs, but technology being used in each job. And then here's the catch, it repeats. So for every job, you're telling me you've used Microsoft Excel.
Yeah, that's nice.
Cool. Let's go back to the drawing board and think of how, and something I love from your resume, Jax, is that you've actually taken the format of having 1 skill column, right? And so you've consolidated into 1 block, and sure, it's not super clear where you've gained certain skills, but guess what? It doesn't have to be super clear. That's what you talk about in the interview. So really that, and I'm gonna kind of paraphrase something Victoria Parker, one of my really good recruiter friends, said, was that resume really should just be, your foot in the door, should just get you the call. It should get you that interview lined up, a preliminary screen, which, in this day and age, majority of the hiring processes are kickstarted by this interview process of reviewing resumes, and then from there setting up the actual phone screen with the recruiter. So a lot of times you have to make it through both of these steps before you even start to talk to a hiring manager or anybody from the actual team. So the biggest thing is getting your foot in the door. So getting all that stuff consolidated, making sure you're highlighting what matters. So even if it's just 1 consolidated area for your tools that you've used in security, or the skill sets that you've refined, right? And then just going back and maybe only adding a few bullet points to everything else. I think that's a really good mix of both.
I love those. I'm going to pop this question up here. I think this is a really great question by Genevieve. What would you say about an entry-level position requiring 5 to 10 plus years? Would you suggest that we apply for the jobs anyway, even if they only have maybe 2 years of experience?
Yes. What's the worst that can happen? The worst thing that they can do is say no. So I think that some of the jobs have a blanket range, and that's just what they've been used to seeing, but it shouldn't be a deterrent to you unless it's an executive level position where you're they're looking for 5 to 10 years in management. okay, then maybe think twice. But if it's an entry level role, I say go for it. I mean, you have nothing to lose. So I would say with 2 years, just make sure that you highlight exactly what you want to highlight in that resume, and then, put your best foot forward, and hopefully, fingers crossed, you get the interview.
Yeah, you never, you're always going to miss the shots that you never take. That's what I always say. My business partner and I say it all the time. You got to try. I mean, I will always push out my resume and see what happens if I'm wanting to get a job and it might be outside of my comfort zone or my knowledge base. I think this was just a really good comment. This is definitely specifics. I love it. Shoot for 600 words. I've never counted on my resume, but 600 words. But this is great. I love this. Maybe 1.5 pages, highly tailored to the job you're applying for, save unrelated bullets to another document. Yep. Like if you need an attachment, have it. What I always say is if you're going to have a second page, unless that education is, and even if it is directly related to that job, you can put it in one of your bullet points above or a summary or whatever you want to do. But education and your skills and stuff like that would go to the bottom, because I mean, unless the job actually says we want you to have like a PhD or a master's, they don't care that you have an undergrad in that. Typically, they want in cybersecurity, they want hands-on experience. They want to see that first. So if you're going to make a second page, I always say put your like academia stuff. Now, if you've got, and I'll actually show mine. I think this would be really good because I've had a few recruiters, actually almost every recruiter that's ever seen my resume has always told me that I have a very good resume. So I'm happy for that. I've also had people help me. So for some reason I can't share my resume. So my Chrome, I just got a Chrome has lost permission to capture your screen. So never mind, everybody. They usually let me do it
for another day.
Another day, another time, no big deal.
And I think something that Jax I'd love to highlight is I receive a lot of resumes that only highlight educational experience. And that is more tailored for people that are coming out of college, because we know cyber is a really, really hot field right now. And with that being said, now that there's actually, programs in colleges and universities to specialize in cybersecurity, I receive, especially during these like career fairs, I receive big stacks of resumes. And what people fail to highlight are the skills and the other involvements that they may have that, speak volumes to the type of person that they are and how many activities they're able to juggle at once, right? Like those invaluable soft skills. I'm seeing a lot of like cookie cutter, like I did this undergraduate degree, got this certification, and I'm looking for an entry level job. How do I differentiate 50 resumes that look identical? I mean, that's what I'm looking for. And I know it sounds so silly because this is something like I feel like everybody spoke about when we were growing up, and like, go and get internships and go and involve yourself in a student organization and, go find employee resource groups at this job, whatever job you're at, right? Like showing that involvement and showing your interests and showing your soft skills. Those are things that allow you to not only stand out, but also it speaks to culture fit, which is so increasingly important in organizations today. Yeah,
that's so, oh my gosh. I just talked to somebody this morning during one of my calls about the culture fit. And I think that is one of the most critical things. If we were going to talk about the interview process, whenever I go into an interview, I always take into mind that I'm interviewing them and they're not interviewing me, because it's just always been my mindset is, especially in this industry, you're a hot commodity. They need you. And really it's defining, are you guys my fit for me, not the other way around? And I think when you go in with that mindset and that mentality, and you do it in a way where it's not cocky or ego driven, you have the upper hand. But it also places you in a really good spot because you can engage them and understand about the culture, what they're looking for, because you don't want to work for a culture that's going to look at your resume and maybe you don't have the exact skills, because you're not going to. That's what I found in this industry. You're not going to have the picture perfect skills. But if you can get into a culture that will foster those skills and help you grow, that's where you want to be. And you'll know those cultures because they'll see you and see your passion, see your drive, see your determination from what's on your resume, and they'll want to hire you at that point in time. But not everybody, you and I have talked about this, not everybody has that amazing culture. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to find. I think it's getting better though. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's getting better?
I think it depends. I think it just depends on the organization. I think that there's a lot of organizations that have had that aha moment of, hey, culture matters. And I think that it's really increasingly important for us to kind of figure out, okay, if we want, here's the reality of it. Hiring and also people departing your organization, it's expensive, right? Think of all the time that goes into interviewing somebody. Think of all the paperwork that goes along with everything, and the time that you're taking of, billable hours that could be spent billing to a client, right? Think of it from that perspective. And then think of like how much attrition costs, right? So in my perspective, I want to kind of like calculate my risk a little bit. And I want to make sure that when I'm vetting a candidate, that not only like am I going to be happy, but they're going to be happy, right? Is this something where you're going to be challenged in a good way? Is this a job that you're going to be happy doing? Are you going to feel fulfillment at the end of the day? I just, that's something I ask. I ask, is this in line with your expectations? Does this sound like a work environment? Tell me a little bit about your communication style. Tell me more about like what you like to do on a day-to-day basis. Are you somebody that needs, a break from the nonstop Zoom calls, right? Are you somebody that prefers to be deep into spreadsheets and kind of like leave the calls, in the meetings, like, on the back burner a little bit? Everybody has different perspectives and work styles. And I think that that's increasingly important now in this remote world, is figuring out, is 8 hours of Zoom calls going to exhaust you? Then if that's the case, then this particular job may not be for you, right?
Yeah, is high stress or like constantly varying environments for you? Because I love that type of environment. I don't like the 9 to 5. This is my job. I look at, and this is true story, I look at syslogs all day. I write my analysis. I give my briefs, and I know exactly where I'm supposed to be every day at whatever time. And I'm like, I can't do this job. I get this after a year. I was like, it was just too easy. I need change. I need in a way uncertainty.
And I think that that's something that you have to highlight in the interview, because guess what? If you're only going to have this job for X amount of months, is it really worthwhile to take that job? If they're not going to challenge you and that you need to be challenged, is that a job for you? Probably not, and I think that that's why your mindset is great, Jax, about like making sure that you're also interviewing them. It's not just a one-way street. This is a two-way street. You need to both make sure this is a good fit before proceeding.
I love this question that Camille said. Camille, it's good to see you in here, by the way. We are classmates at Georgetown.
I love this question.
I love it. So I love this, and I think it's critical because soft skills, you need to have it. And a lot of us in the cybersecurity space Erika and I are very introverted, actually. We're ambiverts, so we can be super outgoing, but we would rather have a book, and a nice cup of tea and be left alone. Talk about soft skills, Erika, and your thoughts around what soft skills are relevant for this industry.
Totally. Camilo, amazing question. I think that there's a lot of soft skills here that play a part. I think, I could talk about this all day, but I'm going to highlight a few that I always look for. So I always hire for attitude. I hire for character. Do you carry yourself with integrity? Do you carry yourself with a positive mindset and attitude that is okay with being challenged and learning and maybe not always having all the answers? Those things, to me, the aptitude to learn, the ability to communicate well, the ability to work well in a team environment and have like a team player mindset, those things to me are more valuable than technical skills, because I can teach you technical skills, right? Clearly, you wouldn't even qualify for the job if you didn't have some sort of, aptitude for learning technical depth. You may have covered it in classes or in previous jobs, and there may be some transferable skills there. And so to kind of bridge this conversation is like, I like to have tactical interviews where you're doing one where you're focused on culture fit, and you're having another one that is more technical. So obviously both play hand in hand in a lot of these cyber roles. But that's why I like to focus on the soft skills, because at the end of the day, and I think, Michelle, you were the one that maybe commented like the wish list of a job description. 100%. There's a wish list, but I already know what things I'm willing to budge on and what I'm not. I would rather take someone that is going to come in with a great attitude, who's going to be a team player, who's going to be an excellent communicator, who's just going to be kind of like a positive light and just be eager and, just happy-go-lucky, than somebody that's going to come in with all the technical expertise in the world and just fee-fi-fo-fum and just, not talk to anyone and operate in a silo and just kind of be a Debbie Downer, that's not great for the team morale in general, and you're maybe not going to be happy long term. So those are things that I definitely think about. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I love that. I think soft skills, when I was in the hiring position, that is one thing that I'm not going to click with everybody. Because I don't want people to be just like me. But if you're coming in and I can tell that you have an ego, or I can tell that you're very closed off, I'm likely not going to bring you onto the team, because I want you to be kind of open. You don't have to be an extrovert. You can be introverted and so anybody on here, if you're like, I'm not really an extrovert, I'm not really outgoing, that's okay. It's a technical space that we work in. There are a lot of introverts. I think the key with like personality and just knowing where you are, I would encourage you, go and take the emotional EQ test. Go out there and start kind of learning about yourself and where you can excel in that, because I think that is an area that people fail at. And we were talking about this, Erika, but like that is a big area, because you hire on that as well. You hire on personality. And I think that, and I see it, and I think this is one of the areas that is really a challenge for veterans, because I'm a veteran and I experienced it. We leave the military, especially as a woman in a male-dominated space, we're taught to basically get rid of everything that we are, all of our emotions, that softer side of us, that empathy. And I moved into the civilian space, and I approached things very rough around the edges and very aggressive. And I had to learn how to communicate better and find my new path, and really just find, who do I really want to be? Because I was forced into this square, and that was a lot of self-reflection and figuring out, who am I? That's actually when I found out I was super introverted, but can be extroverted. But when I go into interviews, I prepare a list of questions. So I'm always prepared. I figure out, what is the company mission statement? What are their core values? Who is their CEO? The person that's interviewing me, I find their LinkedIn. I find commonality. Where did they go to school? What do they do? What's their degree? Anything I can to create a common ground. And I know that goes really far, because there has never been an interview, and I'm very fortunate in this, there's never been an interview that hasn't ended with an offer letter for me. But a lot of that is, there's been a job in my mind I can specifically think of that I was not technically qualified for at all, but I smoked everything else that they gave me an opportunity to work for their company, because I showed them and I communicated with my skills. What are your thoughts around that? Like, how can some of these individuals that are struggling in that interview process and are like, yeah, I make it to the interview and then I don't get a call back, or they don't tell me what I'm doing wrong. Like, how can they better themselves to get there, to get better at that communication?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And I think that seeking feedback is a really important part of this entire conversation. Is, making some kind of relationship and establishing that with the recruiter. So if you do get a call back and you go through the interview process and there's maybe crickets on the other end after that interview, I would definitely feel empowered to reach out and say, hey, so-and-so, maybe, haven't heard back. Wanted to reach out to you to see if there's any feedback that I could action for my own personal development. It would be really helpful. You know what? I think 9 out of 10, you're going to get a response and you're going to get some feedback. Because here's the thing. When recruiters set up interviews, we have a system that goes, bing, you have to submit. Here's this, and there's a bunch of criteria that we hire for, and we have to actually write a blurb on what our feedback is in technical skills, aptitude to learn, whatever these criteria are for that specific job is what we're having to write a narrative on to provide feedback. So I'm doing that. The other people that have interviewed you have also done that. And so for a recruiter to go back into the system, it's fairly easy for them to collect the feedback. And, certain people may have put, hey, go ahead and get them another interview. And you may have had other people that just said, yeah, I don't think they qualify, let's move forward. But it would be also really, really great to get that perspective. and also to understand that there's not just one person making this decision. A lot of times it's usually a team, and their different perspectives are coming together to make one decision. So just because two of the five people, might have had really positive things to say, you may not get the job, but that's okay. It'd be really good to be able to take back what you did right and, what maybe you could action on and get their perspective. Something that you said about the EQ test, and I think for anyone applying in any kind of manager level and obviously below, but for a manager, I feel like it's must have. You must have like great EQ skills to take that on. One of the job interviews, and I think this was something that really helped set me apart, is I did a DISC profile assessment, DISC, and I actually took it, I printed it out, and I brought it to an interview. Like, I brought the physical copy, and it had very clearly outlined, here's Erika's communication style. Here are the things that motivate her. Here are the stressors. And obviously this is an assessment, so not everything may be accurate. So I even went through and highlighted what I thought was accurate, what comments I disagreed with. And I literally said, here is Erika in a packet so that you can understand how I best work. And it gave a lot of insight into, what my actual communication style is, my workplace stressors, motivators, how I interact as a team, a lot of those soft skills that you're maybe not able to capture on a resume, but are really helpful. Because let's be honest, interviews are also, you're making an impression, but there may not be time to cover every little thing that you would have wanted to cover.
Yep, absolutely. And I want to bring up a question since we're talking about the soft skills. I like this. How would you list those soft skills on your resume? Or would you, Erika? Would you list your soft skills?
So my perspective is to find a way to incorporate these in the bullets you're putting in each one of your jobs. So an example of this, I love to get involved in things that are not necessarily related to my day-to-day jobs, but that help overall organization, the team. So where if that means training, I love training. I love to pay it forward, and I'll go in an organization and, get involved in onboarding. I'll get involved in reviewing the content, whatever that may be. But I always seem to get my hands into onboarding, and that's a recurring theme. And that's something you can highlight in your resume that shows, hey, you know what? She's happy to do more than what's required of her day to day. That's not in my job description, but guess what? It shows that I am hungry for more. It shows that I care about, the overall team, individuals, and more than just me, right? More than just taking care of me. And similarly on that vein, I'm a very proud immigrant, and I love to highlight employee resource groups. I'm in the council for Unidos, which is our Latin American representation. And that shows, a lot of soft skills. So I think being able to join a council, get involved internally, or even if you're involved in Boys and Girls Club, if you're involved in, Big Brother, whatever, those things really speak volumes on your soft skills and what you do outside of just day-to-day work. So I think highlighting those and finding a way to incorporate them where you're not just having to list soft skills and putting bullets, I would find a way to incorporate them in your day-to-day things.
I love that. And then thinking of it with a holistic approach. I love that. I'm going to throw up another question. This one's a little bit, it's taken up the screen, but it's good. It's talking about switching from a non-IT career to an offensive side of security, taking an entry-level job as a way to get experience, still the best way to get into that side of cybersecurity? Or should we focus on building the required skills for the job that we actually want rather than working up from the bottom? I love this question because it gets asked all the time. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that this is, oh my gosh, this is a most common just route to get in. I feel like this is what people have been doing from the start of cybersecurity. A lot of people that I even work with, I'm like, you started off working in help desk. I will be honest, help desk is a great place to learn. I always recommend that people, if they don't know what they want to do in IT, go work in help desk. Go figure out the things that, make you excited and the things that you may not really like. That way you can kind of refine your career path, because the thing is cybersecurity is so large. You don't really know your niche until you try a few things. And I mean, I've learned that from experience. And so, I started as a pen tester, and I realized quickly that was not really, I needed more interaction. And so that led me into more of the consultative side of the house. And so, you don't know until you try something. So I'm not going to give you a hard yes, go into the help desk, or no, go into help desk. I think it just depends on what your overall strategy is. And if you have a company, some people have a company that they really, really want to work at, and that is their dream company. If that's the case, if help desk is your foot in the door and you can work on your own time on those skill sets, and guess what? A lot of these companies, they're going to help you out with certification reimbursements. They're going to have internal training programs. They're going to have a lot of really, really good areas for you to get exposure in, and you can hone your craft while already getting your foot in the door. So I think it just really depends. I also see a lot of my peers in this space that'll, go take boot camps in their spare time, and they'll go and do whatever they need to do to gain these skills, and then use that as the route to get into the door. So I think it just depends on what your overall goal is.
Yeah, I love how you were talking about taking an entry-level job in an organization and then leveraging their benefits, their education that they provide you. Because most of these organizations, I would be surprised, and I probably wouldn't work for the company because it'd probably be a startup of a startup if they didn't offer you any reimbursement for education, because that's a critical thing for me. And as we all know, education is very expensive in this space, and I'm not just talking about like SAN certificates, just other certifications in conferences and doing your CPEs and everything. It adds up to a couple of grand a year easily. And that's like lower level. When you get into higher management like us, these are expensive certifications, and you have to do all the CPEs associated with them. And it's a lot. Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, so get that free money.
Agreed. And I think that also it's so helpful to be able to be in a space where you can brainstorm what works and what doesn't. Because I'll be honest, I think the very first certification I got was Security Plus, and I was an entry-level type associate, and I didn't even know where to start. And I didn't know that there were so many awesome materials online. I didn't know who Professor Messer was. And it just took one of my colleagues who was like, oh yeah, I started studying for that exam. Let's compare notes and test taking strategies. And did you see Professor Messer's YouTube video? And did you see that he has this and this and this available? And you can purchase this bundle. It's so great to learn organically and get those tips and tricks. Whereas if you're not in the organization, you don't really know where to start other than, going on forums, maybe Discord servers, LinkedIn, and kind of figuring out like, what are people talking about? And getting input there. So sometimes it's just really great to align yourself with an organization that already has those required like capabilities in-house, and leveraging the people that are already, have already surpassed those exams.
Yep. Always reach out to those individuals. Here's a really interesting question. I really like this. Oscan, I hope I said that right. Thank you for popping in and dropping this question for us. How the companies react when they see a candidate totally from different sectors for many years and have only less than a year experience. And we covered a little bit of this, but I want you to dive probably a little bit more into it, of talking about how do you transfer those skills over? You've only got a year of experience, and you're a recruiter, and you're a hiring manager, and you're seeing that, and you notice this person's only been in cybersecurity for a year, but they're in their, let's say early to late 30s, and they've got a wealth of experience. How do you look at that? Yeah.
So I'm just going to give a hypothetical example. Let's say that you are somebody who is wanting to break into the GRC and audit space, and you come from a logistics background, and maybe you were even an underwriter. Who knows? Guess what? I want to see your attention to detail, figure out what skills are relevant to the audit space. So in the audit space, you got to be really attentive to detail. You have to have professional skepticism. You have to be organized. You have to have, you have to have certain guardrails in place, right? And so I think like highlighting, okay, when I was in logistics, like, guess what? If things don't go right, a lot of things cost a lot of money to my organization, right? Highlighting those things. So for me, it's not really a deterrent. To me, it's okay, how can I unpack the layers of what they learned in underwriting and, in this logistics space that are transferable here? Yeah, you worked in a team. You led 5 people. You were able to, get 3 of those promoted. You were able to establish a brand new training program for all of your new hires. There's a lot of things there that you can highlight that are transferable to cybersecurity and to the day-to-day job activities that would make you successful. So that's what I would say, is just try to think of what's applicable and the things that you really think were like, wow, these are things that were noteworthy about this job. This is how I grew and the wisdom that I gained from this role.
And it's all about how you present it when you're talking with the recruiter and the hiring managers. Yes. Yeah, it's so, like, I've run my own company since 2015, and without fail, I'd actually be surprised if somebody did not say something. I run a cybersecurity firm now, yet I still get job offers, even though they know I run a cybersecurity firm, because it's how I present my company and what I've done in that space. So it's all about packaging and presentation. If you can explain your reasoning why you applied for a job that requested 3 to 5 years, and you can say, hey, I only have 1 to 2 years of experience in this space. However, I have all of the leadership experience and everything because of my time in this role, or doing this, or a mechanical engineer, whatever you did, military. That's what they want to know. And they want to know if you can articulate that. And if you can sell it, I promise you, they'll, if you're not going to get hired for that spot, they'll hold on to your resume and find another position for you. That's how a lot of these hiring managers will also work, is if you interview really well, they might say, well, you weren't a fit now. We're going to hang on this and create a job. And they do. They'll call people back. They'll create a job for you. They'll do all of the things to make it work. I've seen it. Yeah.
And what I see a lot across my team is I get internal referrals all the time. So if they're not a fit for X team because that team said a hard and fast rule of 3 years working in this specific area, because guess what? There's certain areas that do require that. And it's not the company's requirement a lot of times. It's like driven by a customer. And so those are also things that are kind of out of your control, but things to be aware of, right? This may not be dictated by the company. And so it's good to understand, well, would I be a good fit in another role that you can think of? If not, opening up that kind of communication to, if something opens up, would you mind considering me? And I'm actually doing that. I had a conversation today about that. I opened up a new role, and we had a candidate from a couple months back that wasn't a fit then based on the level we had open, but they're a fit now. And my hope is that they're still looking and that they would be interested in talking to me.
That's awesome. I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You'll have to let me know how that works out. Fingers crossed. Coalfire. All right. I just said your name, company name. What? delete. Anyway, moving on. So next question. I love this question. So Camille is asking you about the international application process, how to face the job postings, and what can you do when they say no current or future need for sponsorship? I know that's really hard. Yeah.
Yes, this is really hard. And I think that the biggest thing that you need to figure out, Camilo, is whether or not this is a hard and fast rule. Because I will tell you, there are companies where there can be exceptions. Because I've worked at companies where they say no sponsorships, and they'll make an exception for the right candidate. But sometimes you may have to negotiate your salary down based on how expensive it is for someone to sponsor you. So I think willing to be, just kind of open about what that process may look like, what you're willing to kind of give and take to make it work and find a middle ground. And then there's also organizations where it's a hard no. And if it's a hard no, I'd rather know earlier rather than later, so that I don't spend more cycles trying to get my foot in the door.
Yeah. All right, we're coming up on time, but there's so many more questions, and I want to cover this one because it's something you and I have talked about because of my own journey of where I'm going in certain things. So salary ask, you've gone through the interview process. You're talking to the hiring manager. That's usually supposed to be, is like, you talk to the hiring manager and they will typically ask you, what is your salary? And there's been mixed feedback. Even I've received mixed feedback of like, don't tell them a range. Or I've heard, well, tell them a range, but pitch them higher than where you want to be. And what's your thoughts? Like, what is the best approach around the salary ask?
Yeah. So again, this is a very personal opinion. And I think it's just what I've seen that works pretty well for candidates that come. I really like transparency. So I would prefer for somebody to let me know when I ask them a salary question, hey, you know what? I'm not comfortable sharing what I currently make, but I will tell you what my lowest barrier is, and then what I would like to make. some kind of transparency, because guess what? I have a budget that's being mandated from the top, and I have to work within these guardrails. So from my perspective, like, I would love to, if you're a good fit, I would love to get you top dollar, but I also have to work within a range, and I need to know whether you price yourself out. If you price yourself out, then I'd rather be honest with you from the get-go so that I figure out, is there any negotiating room here? Because if you come to me and you say, I need $500 bajillion. Well, sir, is $500 billion what you have to have, or is there some wiggle room here? Are there other benefits that would make you kind of, reconsider what your appropriate range is? And I think just having transparent conversations there, I don't think you have to give an exact salary of, what you're making, but I think like giving an idea of what range you'd be comfortable making is a really appropriate way to respond.
And to touch on that too, so everybody can be a little bit educated on how do you approach this? Well, research the market. Now, Glassdoor, I have heard, is not the best. And some of the other tools, when you Google and try to get a salary range, are not the best. So what you can do, and Kimberly mentioned this a little bit earlier about networking. Networking is essential because you can reach out to the companies, learn not only about the culture, which we talked about earlier, but you can talk to people and say, can you give me what a realistic, don't ask them what their salary is, but be like, can you give me what a realistic salary frame is for a manager in the federal side? And they can reach out to people that they know, and they can give you that information, and that will help you to come more prepared on what your ask is going to be. And a lot of times, if you have a good recruiter and you do ask for a bazillion dollars, they're either going to give you a really, like, if it's a good recruiter, they're going to give you a heart to heart and say, hey, I'm looking at your resume and I'm not seeing you in, like, you're asking for this much, and that's a senior manager, director level. And your resume either will meet that and they'll say you're overqualified, or they'll say your expectations are not at where it needs to be. Your resume shows that you need to be at this level, or this job isn't a fit. That's the dialogue. But you coming in and asking for an unrealistic salary only makes you look like you haven't done the right research and the education around that company and that position specifically.
Totally. Recruiters are our friends. So definitely leverage them, ask questions, and try to have really transparent conversations with them, because they're motivated to get you the job. They got to fill some headcount, right? So I think recruiters are a great tool for you, and I would leverage those relationships. Build a network of recruiters, because guess what? If they don't hire you for this job, they may 2 years down the line, they may post a job that you love, and they may not even be at the other company that you were looking at, 2 years back. So definitely don't burn bridges, and just try to keep an open mind, as everyone that you meet is a networking opportunity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I have a question on here by DC Riley. I don't understand, why do managers hire outside of their ream? Is it team? I think it's team. Yeah. Yeah. Why? And that's a great question. Instead of, and I think that's what you're asking. Why don't they hire within? And they hire,
like promoting within.
Yeah.
So
correct us if we're wrong on that, DC.
Yeah, correct us if we're wrong, DC. But I would say we hire outside of our team because there's a need. There's not enough people to do the work. I think, like, from my perspective, I always want to celebrate my people. If I have good people, I want to promote from within. I want a culture that, is contagious, and I want to have these skills like organically be celebrated throughout. And sometimes it can be pretty disruptive when you bring someone in that may not be a culture fit. So, I think making sure that somebody is a culture fit is the biggest thing. But you know what? I may not have the headcount, and I may be selling work like it's nobody's business, and I just need to grow my team. So I'm looking for people that are going to be both a culture fit and also have the technical wherewithal to do the job.
Absolutely. Big shout out to Dave. He hopped on here. This was a panel. I think you were on it earlier, a CMMC panel that he actually hosted. Yeah. So thank you for subscribing and sharing. And if anybody's in here today, and this is your first time to hop in on a live stream, definitely go find us on YouTube, like, subscribe, share this out. Before we wrap up, Erika, is there any last words that you would like to just tell the listeners, that, like, some motivational words that you want to share with them?
I would say just put your best foot forward, go for it, and ask for feedback. I think those are the biggest things that I'd love to highlight. If you miss the entire live stream and that's all you capture, is just capture that. Go forward, conquer, be optimistic, and then also just really solicit feedback and be really hungry for information, because guess what? If this isn't a fit, there's a reason it's not a fit. And just keep your head up and keep going and take the feedback that you've received and try to learn from it.
Oh my God, I love that. That was awesome. Well, oh, one more. Okay. All right. And then we're going to do a closeout. So we've got a question. What's your opinion on staffing agencies like Robert Half? I'm not familiar with Robert Half.
I know Robert Half. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of staffing agencies. And staffing agencies are great. I would say I have an internal recruiting firm, recruiting company, like within our company. So it's a function within our company that we don't outsource. So staffing firms are utilized by companies that either don't have a recruiting team in-house. So some companies only have HR and HR does not have recruiting. Sometimes it's two different departments. So staffing firms are great. A lot of times these people are actually, just to shed some insight, they're usually paid on how many people they get fit. And you have to stay at the job for 3 months. So guess what? They are mutually motivated to make sure that this is going to be a fit for you because they're investing a lot of time into making sure that they're placing you, but you got to stay 3 months. And so I would definitely partner with these types of recruiters when you do find a staffing firm and make sure that, you're asking the right questions. And a lot of times they have a lot of different companies in their purview and a lot of different jobs that they're hiring for. So I would just be very transparent with your expertise, with your limitations, and with what areas you're really looking to grow in. Because if company A and B don't work out, they may have C and D lined up as well. So I think that's a great tool, especially for people that, want to be considered for multiple opportunities and don't have a refined, I want to work at this company. So I think that they're great when leveraged the right way.
Oh, I love that. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Erika. I'm going to go ahead and say la vie, and I'm going to do my closeout. So you're awesome. Thank you for being a guest. I look forward to having you back. Oh, before we close out, and I kick you off the stage, everybody make sure this week is the last week till the end. No, next week's the last week for the end of the month. What are we doing? Giveaway. Giveaway. I'm like, what are we doing? So giveaway, Erika is donating 30 minutes of her time for one-on-one mentorship. You do not want to miss out on this. We'll announce the winner February 1st. So what you have to do is go to the YouTube page. You'll see the video and it's the winner video. You need to go in there. You need to subscribe and like the video and then put OG winner in a comment. And then I will be filtering those at the end of next week to see who wins. And I will be announcing the winner probably through doing a live stream on YouTube and LinkedIn. So make sure you guys go in there so you can get a chance to connect to Erika. Thank you so much, girl. You've been awesome.
Thanks for having
Love
me.
you.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye. Oh my gosh, that was awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Real quick. So next week, the time change for the episode that's going to be dropping, it's actually going to be at 9 a.m. still. However, it's not really a time change, but we're going live. So I'm really excited because I'm going to talk about branding, which a lot of you have reached out to me about this topic, understanding how to brand yourself in the cybersecurity space and how to brand yourself on the different platforms. I wrote a little bit about this in the book that I co-authored, which is the Cybersecurity Career Master Plan and the importance of branding. So I'm going to actually bring out an excerpt of the book during the live stream. And then I'm bringing on a dear friend, one of my best friends on the show who owns her own branding company called, her name is Audra Mincy. So you're going to learn more about her. The live stream is from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays. And if you're new to the stream and this is your first time popping in, every Thursdays we drop a new episode. Typically they're live streams and they run either from 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But the best thing for you to do so you don't ever miss out is make sure that you go and subscribe to the YouTube page. And thank you all for attending today and hopping in and giving all of your questions. I love seeing you all. So farewell, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye.
Taking a chance.